my God! I really like him though. And I don't care who he's dating. I always had a crush on him though.
What Blu Cantrell never told us about Jay-Z might change how you look at both of them forever.
So this is my public appeal. Blu. The first Blu. Not they daughter Blu. Blu Cantrell. Blu, it's time to talk. It's time for you to sing again.
Because for years, rumors have swirled in the shadows of hip-hop about a secret relationship, a hidden pregnancy, and a silence that was never voluntary. But what happens when that silence breaks? Was Blu Cantrell really erased just to protect the Carter empire? And is it possible that Blue Ivy, Jay-Z's iconic daughter with Beyonce, was never Beyonce's biological child at all?
That's a Blu Cantrell, but yeah, no, he was dating Blue.
Wow,
He had another woman that was pregnant that was about to come out with her pregnancy around
Was
the
she
same
from
time.
the islands?
Something like that.
We're diving deep into one of the most controversial and disturbing theories in music history. And by the time we're done, you might never hear the name Blue the same way again. Blu Cantrell didn't start off as a nobody. Before the drama, before the disappearance, she was that girl. Born Tiffany Cobb, she had the voice, the range, the look, and the backing of major industry forces. After years of background singing for artists like Diddy, she finally got her shot. In 2001, Blu dropped her debut album So Blue and instantly caught fire. It wasn't just successful, it was dominant. Her hit single, Hit 'Em Up Style, Oops, was everywhere, making her one of the fastest rising R&B stars of the time.
While he was scheming, I was steaming in the beamer, just steaming.
The album went gold in 2 weeks, landed on the Billboard 200, and earned 2 Grammy nominations. Suddenly, Blu was doing major press, locking in tours, and becoming a name on par with her contemporaries like Ashanti, Maya, and Monica. But right at that moment, when she should have been soaring, things started to shift. And it wasn't about bad music or poor sales. It was about Jay-Z. Because behind the scenes, Blu was allegedly getting close to him. According to reports from industry insiders, they weren't just acquaintances, they had chemistry. People saw them together at events, on vacations, and even at private parties thrown by figures like Diddy. There were rumors of romance, and even Wendy Williams once directly asked Blu on air whether she'd ever kissed Jay-Z romantically. Blu's reaction? She giggled nervously and dodged the question. She didn't deny it, she didn't clarify, she just smirked, played coy, and left the world guessing.
Have you ever kissed Jay-Z romantically?
No. No, I can't answer that.
The damage was done. The mystery made headlines. And instead of shutting the rumors down, Blu unintentionally poured gasoline on them. This was also right around the time Beyoncé was stepping into her solo career. And if the rumors are true, Jay-Z was caught between 2 rising stars. One bold and outspoken like Blu, the other younger, more strategic and more image conscious, like Beyoncé. In her now infamous Wendy Williams interview, Blu dropped another bombshell. She implied that Jay-Z preferred Beyoncé not because of her talent, but because she was younger and easier to manipulate.
Think at the end of the day, a younger, less savvy to the ways of the world broad.
Somebody a little bit more naive.
You said it, not me.
At the time, people brushed it off as shade, but in hindsight, it sounds more like a warning. A woman who had been used and then discarded. And Blu wasn't shy about her resentment. She accused Beyoncé of copying her entire style. Suddenly, she wasn't getting booked. Her contract with Arista was quietly not renewed. Her radio presence shrunk, and her name started slipping out of headlines. In a matter of months, Blu Cantrell, one of R&B's brightest new stars, had gone silent. Was it just bad timing? Or had someone pulled the plug? If you ask Jaguar Wright, another artist who's spoken out about industry abuse, the answer is obvious. She said repeatedly that Blu's erasure wasn't an accident, that Jay-Z and Beyoncé used their power to blacklist her, and that naming their daughter Blue Ivy wasn't a coincidence, but an erasure.
Jay-Z worked very hard to erase you and me.
By the time Blu tried to stage a comeback in 2013, it was already too late. She announced a 3rd album, called herself a free agent. But nothing ever came of it. No singles, no videos, no buzz. And then in 2014, it all exploded. She was found running through the streets of Santa Monica, barefoot and screaming that someone was trying to poison her with gas. She was hospitalized for a psychological evaluation and instantly painted as unstable by the press. And just like that, her name was buried under scandal. But was it really a breakdown? Or was Blu trying to escape something she was never meant to survive? The rumor that that Blu Cantrell is the real mother of Blue Ivy Carter sounds like a wild internet theory until you start unpacking the pieces. Because once you lay it all out, it stops sounding crazy and starts feeling calculated. Let's start with the timing. Blu Cantrell's disappearance from the spotlight happened around 2004, shortly after her second album release. Her career wasn't just slowing, it came to a full halt. No music, no press, no public appearances. And then years later, in 2012, Beyoncé gives birth to Blue Ivy Carter. The same time Blue was virtually erased from the music industry. Fans immediately noticed the name. Blue. Why would Jay-Z and Beyoncé name their child after the color or a feeling? Theories spread. Some thought it referenced Jay-Z's obsession with the color blue, but others said it was far more personal, that blue was a hidden nod to Blu Cantrell, and it didn't stop there. This leads us to one of the darkest parts of the theory, that Blu Cantrell was forced into silence. Some fans believe she either gave up her child through coercion or was forced to terminate a pregnancy. And they say Beyoncé's pregnancy timeline backs up the theory. Remember Beyoncé's infamous interview with the Australian talk show Sunday Night in 2011? She sat down, looking radiant in a tight dress. But when she leaned forward, her belly folded in a way that viewers described as collapsing. It immediately sparked rumors that she was wearing a prosthetic stomach and using a surrogate behind the scenes. Combine this with Blu Cantrell's sudden disappearance, and the story starts sounding a little too polished. If Beyoncé used a surrogate, who was the real mother? Was Blu forced to carry the baby and stay silent? Jaguar Wright, who's become something of a whistleblower for the industry, has directly called out Jay-Z and Beyoncé. She said they erased Blu, that they used their power to take control of the narrative, silence competition, and reshape the past. She even called out the name choice, Blue Ivy, as a deliberate act. And when Beyoncé found out Blu was pregnant, according to Blu, she panicked. Not only did she allegedly try to poison Blu, she also reportedly forced her to end the pregnancy. That's what Blu says really broke her. Not the industry, not the contracts. That. Fans compare Blu's mental breakdown in 2014, running barefoot through Santa Monica screaming about poison, to the way other stars have been labeled crazy after speaking out. Britney Spears, Martin Lawrence, Kanye West, Jaguar Wright. It's a playbook. When someone becomes inconvenient, you discredit them first, then erase them completely. And all of this makes the Blue Ivy theory harder to ignore. Because even if you believe Beyoncé is Blue Ivy's biological mother, the level of cover-up, the NDAs, the branding, the public image manipulation makes the possibility feel more believable than it should. Think about it. If Blu did have a child with Jay-Z, what would that mean for Beyoncé's entire public image? What would it mean for the Carter empire? For their billion-dollar brand? It would destroy everything. Jay-Z would be seen as not just a cheater, but a man who fathered a child with another woman and buried it. Beyoncé would be accused of playing a role in hiding the truth, or worse, rewriting it. And Blu Cantrell? She would go from forgotten pop star to the missing piece of one of the biggest celebrity stories of the 21st century. And yet, she never publicly had a child, never claimed maternity, never shared baby photos, never named names. She just disappeared. And that's exactly what they needed her to do. Blu Cantrell's career didn't slowly fade away like most artists who lose their shine. It vanished. One moment, she was on top of the charts. The next, she was nowhere. And when you start looking at the how and who behind that disappearance, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Let's go back to 2003. Blu released her second album, Bittersweet. It had solid music, strong vocals, and even earned her a Grammy nomination. But behind the scenes, something wasn't right. The album barely got any promotion. Her label, Arista Records, didn't push it the way they did with her debut. Her tours were cut short, and unlike Beyoncé, who was gearing up for global domination, Blu was being slowly frozen out of the industry. And then her contract wasn't renewed. No explanation, no warning, just gone. That alone raised eyebrows. But then came the comparisons and the accusations. Blu claimed that Beyoncé wasn't just outshining her, she was copying her. For example, Blu released her video for Roundup, a Western-style visual filled with bold fashion, desert backdrops, and edgy storytelling. Not long after, Jay-Z and Beyoncé dropped 03 Bonnie and Clyde, a music video that carried eerily similar visuals. Then there was the Sean Paul issue. Blu released Breathe, a track that became one of her biggest hits, also featuring Sean Paul. Not long after, Beyoncé's Baby Boy dropped with, yes, Sean Paul again.
Baby boy, you stay on my mind, fulfill my fantasy.
The sound was similar, the Caribbean-inspired beat, the hooks, the overall vibe. To Blu, this wasn't coincidence. It felt like strategic copying. And what made it worse was who backed Beyoncé at every step. Jay-Z, Beyoncé's visuals became sharper, her sound more refined, her rollout perfectly timed. Meanwhile, Blu's budget was slashed, her promotion disappeared, her name was quietly pushed out of the conversation. And it didn't stop there. In one of the boldest moments of her career, Blu directly challenged Beyoncé, not just in the studio, but in interviews. In one with The Guardian, she was asked about Beyoncé and didn't hold back. Blu said, "I'm an adult, she's younger, and if she's doing what you're saying, then she's being a little immature. If she goes there with me, it's the wrong move." She added, "If you have issues with your man, address it with him. Don't take it out on the girl." To fans watching from the sidelines, it was clear. Blu was done playing nice. She was calling Beyoncé out, and she wasn't hiding her frustration with Jay-Z either. But shortly after that interview, Blu Cantrell was gone. No new music, no third album, no tour. She disappeared at the very moment she decided to speak out. Sound familiar? According to Jaguar Wright, that's not a coincidence. It's a formula. Jaguar, a former neo-soul singer and whistleblower, has called out what she calls strategic erasure in the industry. She claims artists who pose a threat or refuse to play by the rules are deliberately blackballed, and she believes that's exactly what happened to Blu.
Jay-Z worked very hard to erase you and me, just like he did Elle, just like he did his relationship with R. Kelly, just like he did his relationship with Aaliyah. Blu, it's time to talk.
This wasn't just about music competition. This was about control. If Blu and Jay-Z really did have a relationship, possibly even a pregnancy, then removing Blu from the spotlight wasn't about charts or albums. It was about burying a story. And the pattern doesn't stop with Blu. Other female R&B singers, Maya, Monica, even Aaliyah, were all prominent before Beyoncé's solo career took off, and all of them seemed to hit walls. Maya went from award shows and major tours to the indie circuit. Monica stopped getting mainstream radio support. Aaliyah, who was already transitioning into Hollywood, died in a tragic plane crash in 2001, just as Destiny's Child was about to become unstoppable. Some fans and insiders believe this isn't random, it's systemic. Jay-Z, by 2004, had become the president of Def Jam, a position of immense power, and Blu's contract just so happened to be dropped around that time. She later revealed that the lawyer she was advised to use during her contract negotiations was also working for the label. A clear conflict of interest. She never stood a chance. Blu said, "If I'd known, I would have gotten my own lawyer. That lawyer was working for them. They took what was mine." She had no control of her masters. She got barely any royalties from her own songs. And when she tried to push back, she found herself isolated, with no support and no platform. And then came the final blow, her 2014 breakdown. By 2014, Blu Cantrell had already been missing from the music scene for years. There was no third album, no tours, and barely any interviews. Fans who once watched her dominate the charts were left wondering where she went. And then suddenly, she was back in the news, but not for music, not for a comeback. Instead, she was found running barefoot through the streets of Santa Monica at 2 a.m., yelling that someone was trying to poison her with gas. Police detained her and took her in for a psychological evaluation. Just like that, Blu became a tabloid headline, a cautionary tale of another singer gone mad. The media pounced. They called her unstable, unhinged, and washed up. But for some fans, the story felt too familiar to ignore. This wasn't the first time a celebrity had seemingly unraveled under strange circumstances. Back in 1996, Martin Lawrence was found in nearly identical fashion, walking through LA traffic, waving his arms and yelling about people trying to kill him. Kanye West, in 2016, was forcibly hospitalized after going on stage and calling out Beyoncé, Jay-Z, and powerful elites in the industry. Britney Spears famously suffered her breakdown after years of legal control and psychological abuse. Every time a celebrity begins to speak out or simply becomes inconvenient, there seems to be a narrative waiting to paint them as crazy. Blu's case followed that exact pattern. But she didn't go silent forever. In fact, she later began to speak out, and what she revealed would put her 2014 breakdown in a completely different light. According to Blu, that incident wasn't just a mental health crisis. It was the aftermath of a trauma she hadn't been allowed to share. She said the industry didn't just forget her, it erased her. And worse, it betrayed her. She claimed that she had been taken advantage of by the very people who once promised to protect her career. She alleged that her lawyer, the one assigned to help her navigate her contract with Arista Records, was secretly working for the label and Jay-Z's circle. In her words, that lawyer ended up representing them. Conflict of interest. They were all working together to basically take what was mine. She says she was set up, misled, and discarded. But that's not the most explosive part. Blu says someone tried to poison her using gas, that the 2014 Santa Monica incident wasn't a breakdown, it was a desperate escape. These claims are almost impossible to prove, but Blu is not the only one to make them, or to have her life derailed in the exact same pattern. Teaira Marie, once hailed as the next big thing under Jay-Z's Rockefeller umbrella, experienced a similar fall. Insiders say Beyoncé allegedly caught wind of her getting too close to Jay-Z and shut everything down. One blind item alleged that Beyoncé sent word to every major label executive, no record deals for Teaira. If anyone defied that, they were allegedly paid a visit and warned. Then there's Kathy White, another woman linked to Jay-Z. Rumors swirled that she too was pregnant with his child and planning to go public. The day before she was allegedly set to expose the affair, she was found dead. The case was closed quickly, no further questions. But in the years since, whispers have grown louder, pointing not at Jay-Z but at Beyoncé. Some believe Kathy was silenced before she could speak.
The other mistress that has a love child with Jay-Z, allegedly. I didn't work on that story, but the reporters that did reported that, she was paid very well to basically shut up.
In that context, Blu Cantrell's 2014 breakdown feels less like a meltdown and more like the final scream of someone who had been silenced for too long. She had no label, no protection, no platform. She was painted as unstable, and the industry, conveniently, got to move on without ever answering for what happened to her. Blu Cantrell wasn't the only one. As Beyoncé's star began to rise, other talented women in R&B started to disappear, not just fade, but vanish, abruptly without closure. And when you line up the stories side by side, the pattern is hard to ignore. Maya was everywhere in the late 90s and early 2000s. She had Grammy-winning collaborations, major label deals, and was featured on some of Jay-Z's biggest tracks. But just as Beyoncé broke off from Destiny's Child to launch her solo career, Maya's presence in the mainstream began to shrink. She was pushed toward independent labels, struggled with distribution, and eventually was left to hustle on her own. Years later, she hinted at being blackballed, saying she felt she had to rebuild her career from scratch after industry politics turned against her. And then there's Aaliyah. Before Beyoncé stepped into the spotlight, Aaliyah was on track to become the definitive R&B and pop queen of her era. She had already transitioned into acting. She was landing Hollywood roles, developing new music, and dominating red carpets. But in 2001, Aaliyah tragically died in a plane crash, just as Destiny's Child was beginning its final run and Beyoncé was being positioned for solo superstardom. Some fans have questioned the timing of it all, not in a conspiratorial way, but from a cultural standpoint. Aaliyah was the only artist standing in Beyoncé's lane. After her death, the landscape shifted. Beyoncé didn't have competition on her level anymore. And that brings us back to Blu Cantrell. Because what if her story was just the first chapter in a much longer book? A warning, a test case, a woman who had the talent, the connections, the fan base, and then had it all taken away. The music industry has done this before, and it will do it again. But now the truth is slipping out, slowly, from whistleblowers like Jaguar, from interviews Blu tried to give but were buried, from fans who remember, from documents and contracts that no longer stay hidden forever. Because if Blu Cantrell was erased, someone else might be next. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.